Building your first CNC could be really, really exciting, but it can also make you feel like a mouse in a maze. And it would be nice if you had the big picture. I want to talk a little bit about what I'm going to be covering in this series of videos, and also give you the supplies that you need to have ready for the first big start of the build, which is coming next week. This design that I've got in the background tells you some of the issues that are going to come into play. Ultimately, we need to address and conquer a hardware side of things. We need to conquer a software side of things. We need to the tools and assembly side of things, and we need to conquer the design side of things. I'm going to today go focus in on some very basic hardware to just dip your toe in the water so you can find out, does this software work? Is this something that I'm going to be able to accomplish without too much frustration and get you started off on the right foot? How do you initially get started? What do I need to get my foot in the door? And then you build your confidence, and then you're going to be off to the races. So if you can make it through this bottleneck, I think you're going to be a long, long ways to making your first CNC. So let's talk about what you're going to need if you want to follow along and be making this as I go forward in my next video. The first thing you're going to definitely want, if you're going to build your own CNC the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to be using an Arduino Uno. And in particular, you want the name brand Arduino Uno. Don't get an off-brand, don't get a clone. Some of those clones have problems interfacing with your CNC, and I can't tell you which ones they are and why it happens, but I know it does happen. This is going to set you back about 25 bucks. You can pick all this stuff up on Amazon. The next thing you're going to want is you need a little shield that sits right on top of your Arduino Uno, and it just plugs in, and then it creates a whole bunch of screw-in terminals that we can hook wires into, and it's super convenient. This will keep us from having to solder a lot of our connections. Very, 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 very useful. This is a huge shortcut and a big time saving, and allows you to troubleshoot your CNC and reconfigure really, really easy. Well worth the 25 bucks or so it's going to set you back. The next thing we're going to need is a stepper motor. This is a NEMA 23. The 23 means the size of the faceplate on the top. The NEMA is National Electrical Manufacturers Association. It's a standard, and so 2.3 inches across is the configuration, and they have set spots for the holes. But what you may not know is that all stepper motors are not created equal. Even though it's a NEMA 23, not all NEMA 23s are identical. They have different shaft sizes. For example, this one's shaft size that I'm going to recommend is a 10 millimeter shaft size, and it's flat on one side. I really think that is really, really nice because it allows you to put a set screw to really hold it down. Another thing that is not always the same for these NEMA 23s is how much torque it's going to be able to produce and how many amps of current it can handle. This is a beefy one. This can handle 4.2 amps of current and runs at 36 volts. It can actually run a little bit lower. I think I've been running it at 24 volts actually, but 36 is what it's recommended. And I highly recommend, if you're going to build a larger CNC machine, that you really go with no less than a NEMA 23. You don't have to necessarily get this one. You can go down one tier. This is going to set you back a little bit of money. If you buy them in sets of 3, you can get 3 of these for $99. And if you buy them as a single, this is going to set you back 40 bucks. Ultimately, if you're going to build exactly what I've got here, you're going to need at least 3 of these and then one more smaller NEMA, or you can do 4 of them in total. But I would recommend you start with just one and make sure that you can get all the wiring, and then you'll be confident, and then you could probably buy another set of 3, and that's a good way to go. In order to handle the amount of current that NEMA 23 is going to draw, we cannot just run it straight from our Arduino out into that. It would fry our Arduino, and that's what this is for. This is a motor driver, and it allows you to put an outside power source into it, and allows you to make all your connections, and then this will feed it out to the motors. This particular one is the one I highly recommend. It is the DM542T digital stepper driver from Steppers Online. It's got some advantages. One advantage is these green plugs will pull out, and they also have screw-in terminals for wires, and that's super convenient when you're trying to reconfigure this. Really, really nice. The other thing that this has is it has mounts which is a big deal when you try to set this in a nice configuration so they're not lying all over the place. So get one of these to get started. This is going to set you back about 29 bucks. Eventually, you're going to need one for each one of your stepper motors, but I would start with one to make sure that everything works. Another thing you're going to need for your Arduino is you're going to need a USB 2 cable that's got an A side ending. If you don't know what the A ending is, it's kind of a square blocky ending. This comes typically when you buy a printer. They usually have one of these USB 2 cords and then that connector. So you probably have one of these lying around your house. Ultimately, you might want a longer one for your CNC, but if you don't have one of these lying around, you might want to pick one of these up. Then, of course, we're going to need a power supply, and the power supply that you want to get, since that's running 36 volts, whatever NEMA you get, you got to check its voltage. You want to be a power supply that has enough voltage to handle it without overdoing it, and also has enough capability to handle all your steppers without exceeding the amp ability of your particular power supply. I would get no less than a 15 amp power supply. This one's like 16.7 amps that it's capable of using. Chances are we're never going to max those steppers out to the full 4.2 amps. And so even if you had 4 of them, something that around 16 amps should more than do it. But if you're going to buy it, go ahead and get the 36 volt one and you'll be set. There are also power supplies out there that you can variably adjust the voltage. If you're a maker and you like doing these projects, you might want to look at one of those alternatives. It's going to set you out about a little over 30 bucks. And one thing they don't typically include with them is they don't typically include the power cord that goes with it. So buy a power cord on Amazon that is capable of handling at least 15 amps of current. So you want something like this. If you want to get one at 20, that's even better. Just a few wires you're hooking in. It's really intimidating to do, but as long as you leave it unplugged and you follow the directions and you keep your fingers away from anything, you should be good to go. Another thing that you're going to want is you're going to want some little electrical connectors that are solderless. I picked this up at Harbor Freight, a kit, and I think it was like $4 or $5 at most. If you don't already own a wire stripper crimper, it's nice to have one of these. You're going to want some unbraided small wire. This is actually not to wire directly into this. We're going to use a shielded cable eventually for this, but this is actually to use as wires to splice from your Arduino directly into your, or actually from the shield, I should say, into the stepper driver. Wiring in those screw terminals with an unbraided piece of copper is so much better. Otherwise, your wires tend to break and fray, and you wonder why your connections aren't good. You can just get this up at the local big box store and you should be good. And I think that's it. The next video is coming, so if you want to get ahead of things and you want to get your supplies, you can. And if not, I'm going to show you how to deal with, in the next video, how to flash on our software onto this Arduino, which will be GRBL software. It's free, it's open source. And then I'm going to show you how to, either on a Raspberry Pi 400 or your Windows machine, or if you have a Linux machine, what software you need to put on there, which is also open source and it's free. And I'm going to help you configure it, and we're going to wire up our power supply. We're going to hook in all of the components to get one of our stepper motors up and running, and we're going to test it and see if it runs in the software. And once you do that, it's repeat the process for the other ones, and you're just plugging it into different slots inside that shield, and you're like halfway home at building your first CNC. You've got the software on both sides of this taken care of. It's a huge leap forward. I might have to split it actually into 2 more videos because I don't want to overwhelm you, but It's coming very, very quickly. Hope you tune in, and I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving.